In 2022, I found these old ruins buried on my land. I spent several months digging them out by hand. In one of the outside walls, I found this rusty cast iron old cooking range in what was once the kitchen of the building. Next to it, I found the base of what I assumed was once a bread oven, with a layer of fire bricks at the bottom. Eventually, by the end of 2022, I dug out and cleaned out the whole of the inside of the building. All the stone that I dug out I kept in a pile for reuse for later projects. This year, I decided to start my renovation of the old ruins by transforming the old kitchen into a new outdoor kitchen space complete with a barbecue grill and a new pizza oven where the old one was. I started by stripping the old plaster off from the walls. It was already crumbling away and it was easy just to peel it off using a trowel. Next, I removed all the old bricks and cleaned up the whole kitchen space. My brother and my dad helped me start the process of stripping the walls back. They were filled with soil and weeds, and several layers of the stone had to be taken off to make a solid base to build back from. I also did a deeper clean of the whole fireplace area, scraping it all down and brushing it out. After using a leaf blower for a final clean, I eventually had the solid base that I wanted to build back up from. The final task for the preparation stage was by the old doorway to the building, where roots had done the most damage to the walls. I had to cut them back using a saw and then strip back the whole area. I topped up my supplies of walling stone, and finally I was ready for the rebuilding stage, starting in the lower outside corner where the wall had collapsed the most. It was a slow process finding the right stones to fit the gaps, and I was a complete novice to stone walling like this. I moved between the insides and the outsides of the walls, building them up, and when I had restored the outside corner to the same height as the rest, I started work on the grill surround. I only built up the wall behind a few layers because I still wanted to see out and over it into the valley behind. When the barbecue structure was mostly complete, I started on the side wall, which has suffered a lot more damage and was also a lot wider, so it was a big job. Because I was only building the walls up slightly, I didn't use any builder's line, I just did my best to keep the wall straight by sight. And with the side wall now completed, I started to turn my attention to the base of the oven and building that up like the rest of the walls. Like everywhere else, it needed to be stripped back and cleaned up, and the roots all removed from the walls. Even though there was an existing base of fire bricks, I wanted to raise up the height of the oven, and also to use newer materials. On the outside of the building, I also had to build up and repair the curved part of the wall that formed the back of the oven base. I had to tear half the wall down to rebuild it with fresh mortar. I measured out a space for the 2 grills, and then started building up the plinth for the oven. Once I built up the 2 outside walls, I filled the cavity in the middle with concrete and old blocks. When the plinth was built, it was time to complete the barbecue area, so I started grinding down the worst of the rust in preparation for the finish. I did test patches for a few different finishes, but for all the oil-based finishes, the rust started coming through again after only a few days, so I had to settle for using outdoor metal paint that gets used for railings and gates. I definitely would have preferred an oil finish like a cast iron skillet, but it just wasn't feasible in such an exposed outdoor setting, and in the end I was pretty happy with how it came out. For the barbecue pit area, I first built up the level with stone and regular mortar, and then topped it off with a Heatproof Screed material to protect the stone and the paintwork. After spending a small fortune on pizza oven supplies, it was time to finally start the build of the oven. I started by putting down a layer of ceramic fiberboard insulation. I added more Heatproof Screed around the edges. For the doorway, I built the base and the walls from fire bricks to fit a cast iron frame, and the same company I bought the door from sold a pre-cast archway for the top with a pre-cut chimney hole as a shortcut. For the floor of the oven, I used the same Heatproof Screed with a concrete finishing trowel. Once the base had set, I made a mould out of wet sand for the dome of the oven. I built the dome out of the same material as the base, trying to keep a consistent thickness. And next I added the chimney, slotting it into the hole and cementing it in with fire cement. After leaving the dome to dry out for a week, I scraped out all of the sand from the inside. With the main structure of the oven complete, I added the glass to the door and then had a series of small curing fires to carry on driving out the moisture from the mixture. You're meant to do this before you add more insulation layers to keep it as dry as possible and ensure the dome doesn't crack. It had already dried out naturally for a week, but you could still see the moisture coming out in the steam. Next I added a layer of ceramic fiber blanket insulation, keeping it in place with wire mesh and then adding another layer of oven cement. Because my plan was to clad the whole thing in stone, I didn't worry about the finish and kept it pretty rough. I was now ready to add the final layer and started the long and intricate process of adding a final layer of stone to cover the whole oven. My original plan was to paint the stainless steel chimney black, but I decided that it was too low, so it was easier just to buy a new chimney and add it on top. The original chimney had a valve to open and shut the flue, so I kept that by leaving a gap in the chimney stack. With the oven finished, it was time for a final clear up. The project had taken me so long that it was now almost winter, so there wasn't much chance to use the outdoor kitchen until next year. I fitted the barbecue grills in their place to complete the barbecue area, and then washed down the flagstones to remove the dirt that had built up over the build. The kitchen had started the year in a pretty sorry state, but after months of hard work, I had now managed to restore it to a functional and much more beautiful space. There's still a lot of the build to be continued, the rest of the walls still need to be restored, but at this end at least, it's now starting to take some shape. This is what the kitchen end looked like in the spring, and this is what it looks like now.